spokesperson for the Office of the Governor of the CNMI, Mr. Kevin Bautista. Good morning, Kevin.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, morning. We're doing pretty good. How are you guys doing over there?
We're doing okay. Just like with Guam, we continue to monitor the Delta variant. We actually announced new entry requirements. Sorry, Chris, about for the CNMI for inbound travelers.
Here we go, guys. Heads up, new entry requirements because all the Guam people have been going over to NMI. So now there's some new development here. Kevin, what are the new travel requirements?
Just from an abundance of caution that's happening with what we're seeing with the spike in cases from inbound travelers coming to the CNMI. So effective today, all inbound travelers are required to quarantine in a designated government facility. What that means is that before we used to have home quarantine protocols in the past where upon lodging assessment, folks would be able to go into visiting family and then go and stay with them and be in home quarantine. But now with this new guidance that came out last night from our Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation and our COVID-19 task force, all travelers will be required to quarantine in a designated government facility for 5 days. Travelers will be tested for COVID-19 on arrival and on their 5th day. That hasn't changed. And then all travelers who test positive for COVID-19 will be isolated in the facility for 10 days. And then all pending home quarantine applications will be denied. Travelers currently in home quarantine are expected to complete their quarantine at home and are required to report to their 5th day test.
Kevin, does this new travel requirement policy include individuals who are fully vaccinated?
That is correct. That includes all inbound travelers, vaccinated or unvaccinated.
Does it also? Is there still? I'm sorry. Is there still a requirement to bring the negative PCR test if you're just going to go into quarantine?
Only for travelers who are requesting critical or essential work approval. They'll be evaluated based on the strength of the work justification, their point of origin, and of course, what you said, negative PCR test results stated no more than 72 hours prior to arrival, as well as their vaccination. So yes, we have these added layers for folks that are requesting essential work and that includes their negative testing, their vaccination, proof of vaccination, and then continuing to practice the COVID-19 precautions that we're continuing to preach with both our regional partners and here on island.
Guys, this is huge. CNMI has reinstituted quarantine for incoming travelers as part of their incoming traveler requirements. Kev, let's talk about what led to this decision.
A lot of this has to do with, just the spike in cases regarding the Delta variant that's happening in the States. We are cognizant of our brothers and sisters in Guam. And at the same time, too, we want to be able to make sure that the CNMI hasn't seen any community spread of COVID-19 over the last several months, and we want to keep it that way. That's the priority of the governor, priority of our Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation and our task force, and we want to be able to continue to work proactively in terms of keeping the people here safe, our Manamku, our people with pre-existing conditions, and continuing the success that we've had in terms of maintaining this level of no community spread here in the Commonwealth.
Sorry, I'm just. So was this like? I mean, when looking at you guys did have concerns about the Delta variant, was this kind of like what you looked at as the most important and impactful thing you could do to keep the CNMI safe? Because we're currently we're tracking that our governor is going to release some restrictions. Probably, I mean, because of the same reason, right? There's a lot of concern about we're in week 3 of a crazy surge. Kev, I don't know if you read KUAV News, but yeah, we're on week 3 of a crazy surge. So when the governor and all the CHC Health Corporation, all those people kind of looked at like, what can we do? Was that the best thing that they decided on?
This is the best thing that we're able to do with the information that we have. And at the end of the day, we're focused on seeing what spots of potential infection that will come into the CNMI where those gaps are. And the gaps are at our border. The gaps are within our quarantine facility and folks coming in. And we're not necessarily going to say it's just Guam. It's coming from the mainland. It's going to be folks that are coming into the CNMI. And we're cognizant as well of that because we opened up our travel bubble with South Korea, and we're trying to expand on those travel bubbles with other jurisdictions. We want to be able to look at our gaps of COVID-19 infection and see what we can do to protect the community. In terms of restrictions here locally, domestically, we haven't had any, the truth is we haven't had any restrictions of some kind, like a social gathering restriction. We haven't had that in a long time. People, like most events, I was at a funeral yesterday. I was at a funeral the week before. There's no strict limitation to the extent that we need to go, like below 50% occupancy or below or anything like that, where we're reducing normal social gatherings. That hasn't been the case. From an abundance of caution, though, most businesses and establishments are still maintaining a social distancing requirement of 75% occupancy. That's just across the board, both mutually from the government's guidance as well as folks in the private sector, our church community, and businesses around the Commonwealth.
Is there a mask mandate or anything like that?
Good question, Bree. There is currently no mask mandate. However, there is discussion about ascertaining whether or not we're going to be having one. The mask mandate here in the scene, the issue about a mask mandate here in the CNMI, just to preface it for the viewers on Guam, is that since the beginning of the pandemic, Governor Torres and our Commonwealth Healthcare Corporation did not implement a formal mask mandate. Like there was nothing explicit within an executive order that says you got to wear a mask. We only went with CDC guidance and public health guidance that focuses in on the 3 W's: washing your hands, wearing a mask, watching your distance. And we preached that in a way where it sounded like you had to, right? Obviously, but there was nothing explicit within our regulations or within our.
So people just did it, is what you're saying.
People just did it. Exactly, people just did it. And we did a nice public information campaign that focused people on making sure that when you're wearing your mask, you're doing it not just for yourself, but you're doing it for the person next to you. Yeah. And here in the CNMI, we're very fortunate to have a culture of cooperation by our people who look out for folks that may not be able to get by if they do get through a COVID-19 infection. And that's our priority. The governor preached it from the very beginning: protect our manamko, protect our people with pre-existing conditions, and protect the people that you love the most. And that message resonated around our community. And even now, we've got some pushback from folks who were not wanting us to expand the travel bubble with South Korea. And then we continue to just talk about how our travel bubble is focused on making sure that we can restart our economy back to where we want it to be, back to where it was back in 2019, or even before 2019, back before Super Typhoon U2 in 2018. And you know, as a government, we have to deal with those issues. We have to deal with economic viability issues. We got to deal with the public health and safety and security of our people. And Governor Torres has been really focused on being proactive in that regard. And so far, the COVID-19 response in CNMI has been where we wanted to be, and we wanted to continue to do that. There's going to be tweaks along the way. This is an evolving situation, as you often hear. And then, trust me, as a public information officer, I hate saying that. But at the end of the day, for our media
hey, at
partners,
least you're saying something, bro. We don't hear nothing out of our communications people here.
No, but for our media partners, our family on Guam, we want to be as transparent as possible with the information that we have readily available, and we want to continue keeping that relationship with our media partners and with the experts around our field and our friends and family around the region who want to know what's going on in the Northern Marianas.
For the quarantine, does that also apply to the Korean travel bubble tourists or to the tourists that come there?
The Korean travel bubble is maintaining its current restrictions, and that includes the fact that they need to come in with a negative test. Obviously, a proof of vaccination would help expedite the process for them, but because we are labeling it a bubble, the bubble includes also from our end domestically. We're keeping the tourists as segregated as possible away from our local residents. Obviously, there's going to be some overlap. We have some hotel staff that are going to be interacting with these tourists. So what we're doing with our hotel partners, the Hotel Association of the Northern Marianas, the Marianas Visitors Authority, and our private sector partners and hotel partners, we're also making sure that the staff that are in the hotels are well protected and that they're quarantined away from their families when they finish work on any given day, and that continues to be working so far as we see tourists coming in from Korea. But at the same time too, just like with anything, it's a valve. We like with Korea seeing some spikes in cases themselves. There aren't as many tourists coming in on a given flight. There could be they wouldn't be able to meet load capacity on a given flight, and then we just have to adjust as they come. But then when this bubble started coming in, we were seeing close to about 90 to 100 tourists a flight, and from that point, we knew that we had to step up our game and really make sure that this travel bubble was working. I was in a meeting with the governor a couple weeks ago with members of the South Korean Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, and Transport. That's their tourism ministry. And they were very impressed with the way that we're doing quarantine and how we're keeping our community safe. They actually, their biggest comment was the measures we're taking to keep our local community safe, while at the same time too preaching the fact that we are going to continue keeping every visitor safe too, which they appreciate. But then they were just very pleased with the way that we were doing everything we could to keep everyone locally here safe. And they even mentioned that they're going to even take it back to South Korea to see what they can do to add to their restrictions, or to their mitigation measures in South Korea. So again, it's a push and pull with COVID-19. Here in the CNMI, we continue to be cognizant about the Delta variant, but we're also being cognizant about some bigger issues here. Restarting the economy, helping out small businesses, helping out our nonprofits. The governor has been recently working with several nonprofits on expanding their operations by giving them some of the ARPA funding that has been allocated for nonprofits under the spending plan. And so far, that's been moving along as we go.
So was that a no? They're not subject to the new entry requirements of the 5-day quarantine?
They are not under this specific guidance. They are going to be subject to the guidance that we have established with them directly, which honestly is the same. Is pretty much the same thing. They still have to do a quarantine within a specific lodging within the CNMI. And they'll be quarantined for 5 days as well within that lodging assessment, and within that lodging, I mean, and then from there they continue to be tourists within the bubble, as segregated as possible from the local community, but at the same time too getting a chance to experience what our beautiful island has to offer here on Saipan as well as Tinian and Rota.
Kev, I want to go back to the reinstatement of mandatory quarantine for incoming travelers to the NMI. What about returning CNMI residents who are coming from, like, let's say a COVID hotspot, like maybe like Guam, for example?
Great question, Chris. So yes, this new entry requirement update that we're making effective today includes those returning CNMI residents, vaccinated or unvaccinated. they're going to be going back to quarantine at one of our government facilities.
Not at
Would
home.
that be? Yeah, not at home. Not at home. Just because CHCC continues to monitor guidance from the CDC, and we're going to be continuing to listen to the science and the experts on that, keeping our community safe. We understand that's going to be an inconvenience for others, and we respect that. But at the same time, too, we're harping back on the fact that we were one of the first places in the states doing this type of quarantine measure, where we're putting every single traveler into quarantine facilities, and from there, we were able to stop the spread right early on. Granted, we had a couple of people in the past break through, and the quarantine was exactly and we did see some community spread at one point.
Right. Yeah. Kev, I got to get in here, Kev. We're going to jump over the top of the hour if you don't mind holding. We did have a question about the cost of quarantine, so we'll get to that in just a sec. It's 8 o'clock right here on The Breeze and Facebook Live. We are The Link. We're brought to you by Pacific Points, Calvo Enterprises, IT&E, and Jack in the Box. As always, we run the back half of the show 8 to 10 on KUAM TV, so get ready, KUAM TV. Here we come. Good morning, KUAM TV. Good morning, Sabrina.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jason.
Good morning.
Good morning, morning. It's Friday. Woohoo! Is it go on payday?
I think so.
I think so.
It's payday for us.
That's okay.
It's the 20th.
All right. Not too loud. It's 8 o'clock. Good morning, KUAM TV. This is The Link. Miss a lot. No, miss a link, miss a lot. Do not miss the link, okay? First of all, we're on right now with Kevin Bautista, the CNMI governor's office. Breaking news, ladies and gentlemen. The CNMI has reinstated mandatory quarantine for incoming travelers to NMI. And this includes NMI residents. If you're traveling into the CNMI, vaccinated, unvaccinated, if you got 3 eyes on your forehead, 6 feet, doesn't matter, you're going into quarantine at a government facility. Unless you get one of these exemptions, which, from what Kevin's saying, is not going to be that easy to do if you're outside of essential or critical work in the NMI. Kev, but we wanted to ask about the cost of the quarantine, because I know that one way you guys were able to keep the NMI safe, and I think they deserve a round of applause for keeping themselves safe from the COVID. There's definitely so much we could learn from these guys if we weren't so silly about the whole Guam versus CNMI thing. But what kept you guys safe was that you made people pay for the quarantine. Right? So that was a question that we had, was who is going to pay for the quarantine for incoming travelers, Kev?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Well, half a day in Buenos, Guam, to the KUM TV viewers. So the conversation we were having right before the top of the hour was just focused on making sure that we're articulating this new quarantine requirement for the CNMI. All travelers required a quarantine. In terms of the cost of quarantine, we understand that we used to have an actual fee that deterred travelers, but we understand that a lot of borders are opening up as well. So there is no fee at the moment from what I'm receiving from the task force and CHCC. Obviously, just like a valve, we're going to continue to be fluid with the evolving situation, but at the end of the day, we are just going to be taking in all travelers into our quarantine designated facility in the way that we have at the beginning of the pandemic, focusing on keeping our local community safe here in the CNMI.
So it's on the house.
So to speak, yes.
Yeah. Bree?
Have you guys gotten any FEMA reimbursements? Have you guys had to, has the CNMI government paid anything for the quarantine and isolation facilities, or was the cost all borne from that $400 entrance fee?
So the CNMI quarantine facilities, obviously there were some out-of-pocket costs at the beginning of the pandemic, locally, in order for us to jumpstart the process of protecting our borders. But at the same time too, we've kept FEMA looped in the process from the very beginning. And I mean that like strictly from the very beginning. FEMA has been incredibly involved in the process here in the CNMI to help pay for quarantine costs, as well as the putting up the quarantine facilities here in the CNMI and making them operational, and making and putting and outfitting them in a way where they're able to take on a surge of travelers, as well as any potential surges in positive cases as well. So they've been directly involved in the process. FEMA reimbursements continue to go as they go. There is a process mandated by FEMA, and we don't have to get into the technical side of it, but at the end of the day, the communication between FEMA, our Public Assistance Office, our governor's authorized representative, under the FEMA regulations, continue to work in tandem to keep these COVID-19 quarantine facilities up and running, to keep our community safe.
Can we talk about ARPA? How much
Sure.
how much money have you guys released to the community and to the businesses and all of that?
You guys put out your STEMI cards, right?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So
Check this out, Guam. While we're over here arguing about a rise, all rise, while you got no rice, over the NMI, they gave every taxpayer $500 in a card that they spend on island. Every taxpayer got it. So don't give me that. You're waiting on the final guidelines of the EDSI, the ARPA, Treasury, whatever. Don't give me that, because they did it in Saipan. People got money. I'm starting to hate you, Kev. Starting close. But for now, let's put that on hold, and let's go ahead and talk about the rollout. Putting this money into the hands of the people. That's kind of what the ARPA is all about, really.
Right, you're right. We're just having a fun conversation right now, Chris. Yeah. At the end of the day, going back to ARPA and the local stimulus that we just rolled out last week. So it's $500 per taxpayer, and we put that into essentially a debit card. And the reason why we put it into a debit card was because the goal for what a stimulus is supposed to be is supposed to stimulate the local economy. That's the reason why it's called a stimulus. It's to stimulate the local economy. We understand that there were concerns about why wasn't it put into a check, or why wasn't it put into a direct deposit like we did in the last two federal stimulus packages. With this local stimulus package, we're a local island economy that still hasn't seen normal economic activity for the last 2 years. And for us, we know that as a government, we want to continue to help the people of the CNMI get through this pandemic. But at the same time, too, we want to be able to also ensure that we're helping out local businesses as well with this local stimulus through a debit card that can only be used on businesses here in the CNMI. Pay for essential needs, such as groceries, and any items that are needed here on island. On top of that, our nutrition assistance program also came out with what's called the PEBT, the pandemic food stamp program, so to speak. And with that, a lot of families are getting the help they need with the essential funding that's coming in to help defray costs of food, necessities, and everything, just to keep going for this pandemic. And the governor and the administration continues to focus on making sure that we continue to help supporting a lot of our local businesses and stimulating the economy with this opportunity that we have. And not just that, focused on also making sure that we can continue to build back better with the ARPA funding that we're using to help rebuild the local economy from an industry perspective, from tourism, from everything else in between.
How much in stimulus did you guys give out?
I don't have the aggregate number,
Okay.
Bree, unfortunately. I apologize for that. But it's $500 per taxpayer. And I wish I could do the math right now about how many taxpayers we have. I don't have that on me right now. But it's $500 per taxpayer here in the CNMI.
Well, that's good news for the CNMI.
Anything else you have to make us feel bad about?
Yeah, anything else to make us more malago than we already are?
Oh, we're
Guys, stop thinking Kevin's the Debbie Downer, man. He's a good guy, man.
He is.
We
it
love
is-
messing with
Yeah.
It is what it is. I'm just saying, you know.
Hey, Kev, if you should ever decide to block Chris and or Bree and everything like that, just message me and I'll
Yeah,
I'll
Jay
get
got
through to
you.
him.
Jay got you. I'm just saying,
I'll be
like,
your proxy, bro.
I'm just saying,
oh, thanks, bro.
we've been waiting for our gov to come out and do something about this 3-week surge. Kev, we have bars that are telling me, hey, we're not going to wait for the restrictions. We're going to dial back on our own. We got the mayor of Umatics said, don't come to my village and expect a party of 50, 100 people. We're limiting it to 25. Right? So we're already kind of policing ourselves. And while everyone's waiting for our governor to come out and say something, as Delta continues to dig deep and run rampant in our community, you guys are reinstituting quarantine. You're getting money out to the people, which is exactly what ARPA is all about. And we're just, I mean, if you guys didn't have that quarantine, I'd be on the first plane over there.
We'd love to have you, Chris, but at the same time, too, we also want to make sure that you have a negative test and that
Yeah, no connects. No connects.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you guys so much.
All
This is
right.
awesome.
You stay
All right,
safe,
Kev.
man.
Be safe, my
Have a
friend.
good weekend, Kev.
Thank you, Wes.
Okay. Yeah, no hard feelings.
Yeah. Have fun without your mask.
Yeah. Yeah, fun without your mask. I mean, God, I want to say that the NMI is probably like the Republicans' wet dream because they don't have a mask mandate. They got no COVID, right? And meanwhile, in the States, they're trying to like take masks out of the equation in places where COVID is going crazy.
You know, I just thought about something when Kev was talking about, you know, the effectiveness of like their marketing campaigns and the communications message, everything. I remember something because Nestor and I actually caught up with Governor Torres a couple weeks ago. We did an interview with him for Interfull Zoom, and he was still reiterating, you know, that concept that really resonated. He was saying, you know, the idea of, you know, 6 feet apart or 6 feet underground. I mean, that makes an impact on people. I know the Governor Ralph Torres has said that a number of times. Every time it does, I mean, it makes a psychological impact. I mean, it really. Okay. Kev's still on. Kev, do you want to speak to that? Just about how that message has resonated with the folks at the CNMI?
Yeah, Jace, I just thank you for bringing that up. And I mean, you have better memory than I do. The governor loves saying that about COVID-19. 6 feet apart or 6 feet under. That was the message that he came up with at the beginning of the pandemic, and that resonated with a lot of people here.
It's a harrowing truth. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, and let's be real. Like, just like Guam, the CNMI is built on its most basic unit, which is the family, right? And family is so important to our cultures here in the Marianas, both territories. And for us, what we need to do to protect our families is to ensure that we're doing everything we can to keep people safe, under the environment of cooperation, but at the same time too, focusing on making sure that you look out for each other and do that self-policing too. That self-policing really helped out for us as a government, because we're coming in with guidance from CDC and, you know, like, off from the CDC, like, what's that? You know, we're like, who is that? Like, what is it? You know, like, and all that, and you know, and like, what's this federal guidance that's coming out? Like, what is this? What is that? What is social distancing? These concepts were so foreign to us before 2020, and just like everyone else, the government was also trying to adjust. We didn't know what these concepts were too. And we were trying to listen to the experts, listen to our public health experts, and talk about what we needed to do as a community. And Governor Torres knew that as the governor, he needed to come in and preach that. And right now, our biggest concern isn't COVID. Our biggest concern is restarting our economy, because we need an economy here to survive, and that's continuing to be the goal that we have here in CNMI.
Yeah, well, you guys are doing a fantastic job, and hopefully, you know, not just the rest of the region, Kev, but the rest of the world, you know, would pay attention and, you know, hopefully use a lot of what you guys did, you know, as a model for success. So congratulations to all of our neighbors up north, man. We appreciate it.
Good thing you can't
Thank
see
you.
our noses under these masks.
Thanks, guys. But at the same time, too, we continue to look out for our brothers and sisters in Guam. We're watching what's happening down there, and trust me, we really are. And not just from a government standpoint about the surge of COVID that's coming in, but we want to be able to also look out for our brothers and sisters in Guam. We're all one family here in the Marianas, and we continue to think about that.
Right on. Kev, we want to, if you got time next week, we wanted to bring you on and just talk really like communications, right? Just in your role. What have some of the challenges been? What are the priorities? And just communicating and messaging during this pandemic. So if you could put that on your calendar if you're not too busy spending your $500 stimulus.
For sure. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Kev. All right. Okay, now for real, bye.
Next
For
time
real?
you try and call him, I'm sorry, the operator is not responding.
Right.
Your number is not being accepted.
Yeah. It's 8:15, Friday, August 20th. We just got to take a super quick break.